Okay, let's jump right into this. Because when Silicon Valley's algorithmic arrogance crashes head-on into old Hollywood's elite hubris, you don't get a revolution. No, you get an absolute bloodbath. Today we're dissecting the dark, incredibly dramatic collapse of a startup that genuinely thought it could just force-feed us the future of mobile entertainment. Trust me, this is a roller coaster of a story, full of wild twists, billions of dollars lost, and some truly shocking executive blindness.
Right out of the gate, I really want you to wrap your head around this one staggering figure: $1.75 billion. That is the amount of cash they completely incinerated in just over 6 months. I mean, we're not just talking about a failed app here. We're looking at one of the fastest, most spectacular cash burns in the entire history of modern business.
And honestly, that brings us to the central mystery we're unpacking today. How exactly did two veteran industry titans build this massive digital fortress, only for it to crumble almost overnight? How does so much money, top-tier talent, and endless hype translate into, well, absolutely nothing? Let's start with Chapter 1, The Illusion of Invincibility. To really understand what happened, we kind of have to flash back to the glamour, those massive early funding rounds, and the absolute unshakable certainty among the founders that they were building the undisputed future of media. You have this perfect visual dissonance right at the top. On one side, there's Jeffrey Katzenberg, the old-school, traditional storytelling powerhouse who helped build DreamWorks and the Disney Renaissance. And on the other, you've got Meg Whitman, representing the cold, corporate tech efficiency of Silicon Valley, having previously run eBay and HP. They were billed as this ultimate power couple of content and code. But underneath, it was a massive, profound clash of cultures. Just look at the mindset Katzenberg was bringing to the table. He was actually boasting that Quibi had $100,000 a minute to spend on content. He fundamentally believed that if you just threw an astronomical budget at the wall, you could buy the attention of young people. He completely ignored the fact that platforms like TikTok were out there capturing billions of eyeballs for absolutely free, mostly with videos shot in teenagers' bedrooms. It was a total misunderstanding of the new digital economy. And you know, that disconnect went all the way up to the tech side too. When the CEO of this highly hyped, youth-oriented, snackable short-form app was asked what her favorite show was, she cited the History Channel's historical miniseries, Grant. I mean, wow. The crucial takeaway here is that Quibi's leadership wasn't even consuming the type of media they were trying so aggressively to sell. They were completely flying blind, just guessing what younger audiences wanted. Which leads us to Chapter 2, The Cracks in the Code. Because behind all that glossy Hollywood veneer, the technology itself was rotting from the inside. Quibi had this so-called crown jewel called Turnstile. They hyped it to the moon at CES as the cinematic revolution. The gimmick was that you could seamlessly switch between a horizontal, wide cinematic view and a vertical close-up just by physically rotating your phone. Sounds cool, right? But underneath that flashy exterior, the code was an absolute nightmare of a resource hog. The sheer technical hubris here is just staggering. To make that turnstile feature work without any buffering when you rotated your phone, the app was secretly downloading two massive, independent, ultra-high-definition video streams simultaneously. One vertical, one horizontal. This absolutely punished mobile processors, it devoured user data plans, and it basically guaranteed you were going to get buffering issues if you were, actually out commuting in the real world. And on top of that, the tech was ruining the art. For filmmakers, Turnstile totally destroyed creative framing. Cinematographers fell into this square framing trap, where they were literally forced to restrict all the visual action to a rigid, tiny, central cross-section of the lens so it would look okay in both vertical and horizontal orientations. The result? A compromised, cropped, and honestly claustrophobic aesthetic that just looked terrible, despite being shot on these incredibly expensive Hollywood sets. So as the product is struggling, the tension just skyrockets. Out of nowhere, an interactive video company named Aiko launches a brutal patent lawsuit, accusing Quibi engineers of outright stealing their core horizontal to vertical code. There are even wild accusations flying around that former employees had smuggled this code out of Snapchat. Suddenly, Wall Street smells blood. Elliott Management, which is this notorious hedge fund, begins circling them financially. The sharks were officially in the water. Trying to power through all this chaos, Quibi did what they knew best. They leaned hard on their checkbook. They started aggressively bragging about this massive roster of expensive Hollywood assets. I'm talking A-list stars like Anna Kendrick and Liam Hemsworth, huge budget scripted dramas, Sam Raimi doing horror anthologies, high-end daily news from NBC. They were literally throwing everything they had at the wall. And then they made this single Fatal error. They rigidly, strictly blocked users from taking screenshots or screen recordings. Think about that for a second. In an era where memes and Twitter reactions are the absolute lifeblood of entertainment, Quibi totally destroyed any chance of organic, viral marketing. They took all those expensive stars and locked them in a dark box where nobody could share a single thing they were watching. Unbelievable.
Moving on to Chapter 3, the silent pandemic premiere.
The climax of this corporate thriller comes with a shockingly fast timeline. They spent all of January 2020 hyping the product up to the world. Then, on April 6, 2020, they launched. An app designed purely for on-the-go commuters, people waiting in line at a coffee shop or riding the subway. And they launched it exactly when the entire world was suddenly locked inside their homes. 6 short months later, the whole thing was over.
Now, you would think a smart tech company would just adapt, right? Pivot? Nope. Trapped users were practically begging to cast these expensive shows to their living room TVs. Because, let's be real, nobody wants to stare at a tiny phone screen when they are stuck on their couch all day. But Quibi's leadership stubbornly refused to update their technology. They clung to their mobile-only dogma until the platform literally bled out.
And that brings us to our final chapter. Chapter 4, the post-mortem.
The crucial takeaway here is understanding the chilling limits of money when it completely ignores human behavior and market realities. Quibi brought absolutely nothing new to an already saturated market. They completely failed to offer the frictionless, free, algorithmic joy of TikTok. They couldn't even come close to matching the endlessly diverse content of YouTube. And they fell incredibly short of the premium, long-form, multi-device viewing experience you get with Netflix. Ultimately, they built an incredibly expensive solution for a problem that just didn't exist.
In the very end, it was as surreal as it was tragic. In a finale of stunningly tone-deaf elite hubris, executives actually played the song Get Back Up Again, which, if you don't know, is this upbeat, candy-colored animated track from the children's movie Trolls. And they played it while firing their top-tier workforce over a grim, mandatory Zoom call. I mean, it was a bizarre, almost unbelievable lack of empathy.
Which brings us to the final, honestly pathetic tally. This $1.75 billion cinematic dream, hyped as the next great evolution of human storytelling, was eventually sold off for parts to Roku for less than $100 million, just a tiny fraction of its initial cost. A total devastating wipeout of capital. So I'm going to leave you with a final, provocative question to chew on. The next time some titan of industry promises to forcibly revolutionize our digital world, ask yourself, does limitless capital guarantee a successful product if the founders stubbornly refuse to understand their own audience? Thanks so much for exploring this fascinating, messy autopsy with me. Catch you next time.